The other question is the public plan or government option. Now, the news today, you probably saw it, Sebelius, this awful Secretary of Health Education and or HHS, as it's called today. Sebelius now says that Obama is more than willing to drop the public option, the government plan. So there'll be no government plan of any kind. Medicare will be looted. So what is the point of this whole thing with Obama? He wants to impose an individual mandate, meaning that you are forced to buy health insurance from a private insurance company. And that private insurance company is going to be for-profit, deregulated, you can't sue them, and your life depends on it, right? And they get between you and your doctor like nobody's business. So,
well, let me just stop you, Webster. For those that refuse to buy this health care after this bill is passed, they're planning on taxing them as well. So if you refuse to...
The point of this all is what Obama is doing is essentially what you have in Massachusetts. Ironically, what was imposed in Massachusetts by Mitt Romney, the hedge fund hyena, asset stripper, and Wall Street operative who, got pretty far in the Republican primaries. I think he's right now the leading candidate for the Republicans the next time around. That's why I keep mentioning him. But in Massachusetts, he set up the same kind of thing. You're forced to buy insurance. There is no public plan unless you're over 65, in which case you go to Medicare. Now Medicare may not exist with Obama coming in. And therefore, you will be forced to buy from these private insurance companies. Now, the private insurance companies are bankrupt. AIG is an insurance company, 71 of them. It's bankrupt. The Hartford is bankrupt. MetLife just lost $1.5 billion on derivatives in the last quarter. Derivatives is the reason they're all bankrupt. So this is essentially, after we've seen the bailout for the banks, the bailout for the bankrupt insurance companies comes in this form, that everybody's forced to pay them for a lousy, dwindling package. So it's very interesting. The Republicans say, there's going to be a government takeover. What the Republicans do is attack Obama's rhetoric and not his real intentions. They say, Obama promised his own base that he would like single payer and that he'll deliver a government plan. You could see a mile away that Obama was going to basically betray his own base. He's stabbing the Democratic Party types in the back with what he's announced today. This is now an accomplished fact. And all the Democratic senators, Conrad and Baucus and the rest of them are lining up with this. There are no votes in the Senate for any kind of public plan, so there will be no public plan. There is no government takeover in that form. The government takeover occurs in the form of the fascist corporate state. In other words, the creation of a compulsory state-sponsored cartel, in this case of insurance companies, where certain rules are dictated. In other words, if you want to be in the cartel, you can't have pre-existing conditions. You've got to take everybody. But that's very minimal, right? And the quality of the package will go down, down, down as the derivatives bankruptcies go up, up, up. So again, it's the typical fascist cartel to drive down wages of nurses and people like this, to drive down the quality of care, right, with death boards and all the rest, under private auspices, right? Private insurance with death boards. Why not? Government has no monopoly on death boards. The private guys are going to have death boards. They do in effect today. And what's the purpose? Prop up derivatives, prop up Wall Street, set the stage for new bubbles. A couple of other important points. The basic problem of the United States is we're trying to have the medical system of an advanced industrial society, but we don't have an advanced industrial society anymore. We have a post-industrial rubble field, a junkyard. And you realize, of course, the progress in longevity, right, the life expectancy, in the 20th century, going from 35 to 70, basically, in a period of 100 years, that is industrial society makes that possible. You've got to have advanced technology. You've got to have science. You've got to have progress. Otherwise, you'll go back to 35. You cannot hope to maintain the typical medical services of an advanced industrial society once you've let yourself slip into this post-industrial wasteland that we now have. So the other thing is they say it's 1/6 of the economy. 1/6 is too much. The problem is the rest of the economy has atrophied. You don't want to cut healthcare. You want to build it up more. But you've also got to build up the productive apparatus outside of healthcare from which healthcare is ultimately going to live, because this is a service, but it's not really production per se. Building the hospitals and building the equipment is production, but providing the service is what you need to do for your productive workers. So where are your productive workers? Right? We don't have enough. So you got to think about this as a very broad social problem. The other problem, of course, is we have a world economic depression. Don't ever forget it. We're sinking deeper and deeper into world economic depression. We have this Elizabeth Warren, the TARP, the bailout watchdog. She says most of these banks have all their derivatives, their toxic papers, still on the books because they were allowed to mark them to model, not to market. So they're going to hang on to them and pretend that they're worth something. That's the key to why Goldman Sachs pretends to be profitable. And we're headed now into a phase of commercial real estate bankruptcies, so like what we had in after the crash of 87, 88, 89, 90. You had, Olympia, New York going bankrupt, a bunch of other big real estate cartels going bankrupt, and that led to Citibank already being seized by the feds in the early 1990s. So the next wave of the depression is coming in. It's not exactly clear exactly what form or exactly when, but I remain convinced this is certainly not over. So you cannot say, we want the cornucopia of healthcare, but we're going to ignore the fact that we have bankrupt insurance companies and a bankrupt economy.
Let me take you back just a couple steps, though, Webster. What are these? You talked about them being privatized death panels from these insurance companies, and then earlier you spoke about how 15 to 40 are going to be the only people that they even care about. What are these things going to look like? I mean, what are these boards going to look like?
There's more than one death panel, Tim. See, it's the one death panel is certainly this. It's the jargon for this in Washington is MedPAC on steroids. There is an existing entity set up in the 90s called MedPAC, which basically sets guidelines, what technologies ought to be used, what kinds of treatments ought to be offered. And then they come up with ideas about, the age cohorts that ought to get this and so forth, right, when it can be denied. The Congress has generally never accepted the proposals coming from MedPAC, so therefore they call it MedPAC on steroids. That would be a death board. That would be similar to this NICE that you have in the British National Health Plan. There's also under the stimulus there was passed, and maybe I won't get the name of this right, but they had about $2 billion in the stimulus for an Office of Medical Technology Assessment, which I think would also qualify as a death board. The other thing you have, the way that Obama wants to gouge Medicare is to say, I'm going to lower the Medicare reimbursements that we pay to doctors and hospitals. These have already been looted like mad by Bush, Mad Dog Bush the Younger, looted these things systematically for 8 years. And now Obama says, I'm going to go lower than Bush on these reimbursements. Now, that means the following. If a woman needs a mastectomy, she goes to the hospital and says, okay, I'm on Medicare. I need to have this operation. And the hospital is going to say to her, I'm so sorry, but the amount the government is now willing to pay under Medicare, thanks to Obama, is now below what it costs us to do it. So we're going to deny you that here at the hospital. We can't do it because we can't get by on what Medicare is willing to give us. And the doctor also will tell her pretty much the same thing. So there's another way you're going to ration care. Let me also point out, though, rationing by a board of government bureaucrats is, of course, genocidal. The rationing of the market is equally bad. A lot of people in this country have this idea that rationing by a bureaucrat is bad, but if it just means you can't afford it because the market says so, then that's your tough luck and you should go home. That's absolute barbarism, and that will lead to also death on a massive scale. That's why you have to insist health care is a right. It is a natural law right of the human individual, under God's law, we might even say. Meaning, if you don't define it as a right, it's going to just be a commodity. And then the commodity is, well, maybe you can afford that commodity, or maybe you can't. And if you can't, tough luck for you. The free market has spoken, and you're, on your way into the underworld, and goodbye to you. That's not good enough.
But doesn't it seem like that's the system we have right now? I mean, I got this article in front of me right now. LA Sports Arena hosts health clinic of last resort, and 1,500 people.
Yeah.
More than that, thousands actually lined up. They only took 1,500. But this 83-year-old woman who hasn't had teeth in years, she waited for, what was it? I think over 9 hours.
Yeah.
And when she got into the clinic, they're just like, nope, no false teeth for you. So, I mean, is it even a right at this point, Webster?
It should be a right. In other words, I'm polemicizing against people come out saying it's not a right.
Mm-hmm.
Franklin D. Roosevelt, in the Economic Bill of Rights, proposed in January of 1944 as basically what the GIs were fighting for, why you were going to risk your life going up to the beach in Normandy for a country that won't tell you that health care is your right. I don't know. So Roosevelt figured that part out, right? So he proposed a right to a home, a right to an education, a right to health care. Basically, it's about 8 points. Mm-hmm. So the right to the health care would be this is the thing that's missing. These are the 50 million who have nothing, either no insurance or maybe underinsured. 18,000 per year die, according to the Black Agenda report, which I think is accurate. So those are the people you see. That group that you're noting, the RAM, right, the remote area medical,